Television will let you know that we're going to start in just a moment if everyone's ready to go. All right, I think we'll get started. Hello, bonjour. My name is Eric Thompson. I'm an information officer with the Regional District of Okanagan-Similkameen, the RDOS, and we are on the traditional territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. We are in the city of Penticton right now for a quick update on the Christie Mountain wildfire. So just ahead, we'll hear from Nicole Bonnet. She is with the BC Wildfire Service. And then we'll hear from Penticton Mayor John Vasilaki, the City Manager of Penticton, Donnie Van Dyke, and Fire Chief Larry Watkinson from the Penticton Fire Department will give us an update, including information on the structural protection units that are here in the region now. We'll also hear from Dan Toden-Chabot. He is the Operations Section Chief. He'll be part of our question and answer session right after Chief Watkinson. A couple of very quick updates from the RDOS, the Regional District. We would like to remind you that our evacuation orders and alerts remain in place. So that's orders for 319 properties and alerts for 116 properties. Any residents of the RDOS, whether you're on an evacuation order or an evacuation alert, the phone number to call if you have any questions at all is 250-490-4225. And Donnie Van Dyke with the City of Penticton will have more information for Penticton residents coming up in just a few moments. And for our media here, if you could step up to the microphone if you do have a question later on, there's our microphone there. We are all maintaining physical distancing and wearing masks for those of you at home, just so you know. And one final note then, please follow BC Wildfire Service, the City of Penticton, and the RDOS on social media and the websites for all the latest information. Our media have been very, very good about getting information out as well, but for residents especially affected, those are the sources you should go to. And for any information on COVID-19, of course, you can go to Interior Health. With that, Nicole Bonnet is the Information Officer with the BC Wildfire Service. She's going to give us a quick update on the Christie Mountain wildfire.
Good afternoon. So I'll touch quickly. I noticed on social media there's been a couple of comments just wondering about the size of the fire. We do still have it estimated at 2,000 hectares, and that is just an estimate. We're thinking likely over last night there was maybe around 35 additional hectares in growth just with some of the wind from yesterday, but the fire activity has been fairly minimal, so we haven't seen much larger growth than that. We were hoping to get a bit of a track to update the size this morning. We just haven't got that loaded just yet, so stay tuned for that a little bit later on. And the bigger update, I think, is that yesterday afternoon at noon, an area order restriction took place for the vicinity of the Christie Mountain wildfire, and that is for public safety as well as for fire operations. And so I'm just going to read real quick what that order encompasses. So unless you have prior written authorization by an official that is designated under the Wildfire Act, you are not able to enter into the area unless you are traveling to or from your principal residence that is not under the evacuation order. So this does not supersede the evacuation order that is in place. Traveling to or from private or leased property for the purposes of accessing a secondary residency or recreational property that again is not under the evacuation order area. Traveling as a person acting in an official capacity, traveling for the purposes of supporting wildfire suppression activities, or engaging and or participating in agricultural activities that pertain to livestock or vineyard management on private or leased property. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Now the Mayor of the City of Penticton, John Vasilaki.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Yesterday, I highlighted a few different ways our citizens can support the emergency response. And today, I want to take a few moments to commend them for their efforts. I have spoken with many residents who are in the areas affected by an evacuation alert. They have told me about the steps they are taking to prepare for an evacuation, such as pre-registration with the emergency support services, packing their 72-hour emergency kit, and making plans for their pets, and that's very important. My wife and I have also packed our emergency kit, and we are also ready to go at a moment's notice if ordered. I am pleased to report that I have personally witnessed a reduction in the number of people watching a fire from the side of the road or driving their boats in the way of the air tankers and helicopters. It makes their job easier when people take the risk seriously. Please continue to follow these directions and stay clear. I've also been delighted to hear the expressions of gratitude and offers of support for the firefighters from our residents and businesses. The Penticton Lakeside Resort and Conference Center is one example, has provided this room to hold our news conferences. Individual citizens are also making various generous offers. We are very appreciative of the people that are wanting to make donations, but because of COVID, it significantly limits our ability to accept them. I would like to end by saying that while the sky is blue here today in Penticton, the risk remains. Please stay safe and please stay vigilant with your planning and preparations. And I personally can't put into words how proud I am of the citizens of the city of Penticton and the surrounding area for the gratitude that they're showing towards our firefighters. And many of them have been phoning me up until 9 o'clock last night, telling me that those folks that are fighting those fires are their heroes. They're risking their lives to save their homes. So I too would like to thank those firefighters for all the work and the danger that they're in every day trying to save us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items, and then I just want to speak about the success of the interagency agreement that allows for provincial mutual aid for fire protection. Donnie Van Dyke, the Director of the Emergency Operations Center for the City of Penticton, and also am the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Penticton when not in this sort of situation. Let me first confirm that 3,669 homes remain on evacuation alert within the City of Penticton as a result of the Christie Mountain wildfire. Let me second remind folks who may be watching at home that the city has a call center. The phone number for that call center is 250-490-2345. Again, that's 250-490-2345. That call center is open 10 to 4 both today and tomorrow, and we'll have expanded hours on Monday. I should also note that there were 14 calls received after hours last night. Those 14 calls will be returned or have been returned this morning. Folks can follow along at the city's webpage, penticton.ca/wildfire updates. I spoke yesterday, and the mayor mentioned it, about pre-registering using the evacuee registration and assistance tool. So the website for that, again, is ess.gov.bc.ca. Some numbers that have in fact taken advantage can confirm that as of 11 a.m. today, 4,130 individuals have registered from within the City of Penticton using that tool. So I think that's great work. I should also note today that that feeds into our emergency social services network, ESS, that today at our ESS reception center, there are 30 volunteers on site, as well as three individuals from Interior Health that are helping to support our COVID-19 related efforts. I think that's it for housekeeping. I just want to speak very briefly, in case I don't have the opportunity to again, just about the success of provincial mutual aid around fire protection. Of course, that's an agreement between fire departments across the province, the Office of the Fire Commissioner, and the Fire Chiefs Association of British Columbia. What that agreement allows is for fire crews from across the province to be called upon to assist neighboring fire departments from right around the province. And what that allowed us here in the city of Penticton to do was bring in 61 staffed pieces of equipment to assist with structure protection efforts for this crisis. But it also allows us to then release that equipment, knowing that when we need it again, if we were to need it again, we can call upon it. So those 61 staff pieces of equipment represented 143 firefighters from around the province that were able to assist our fire chief, Larry Watkinson, and his team around structure protection. And as I said, this also allows for the release of that equipment and firefighters in a situation like we have today, where the risk level to structure protection and the work that's been done is allowing the release of 56 of those pieces of equipment. So that will allow those firefighters to return home, their apparatus to return home, and them to protect their communities. And I think this is probably a good time to ask our fire chief, Larry Watkinson, to give a bit of an update on structure protection and answer any of your questions on that fact. Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie, and good morning, everybody. I'd just like to start with a big thank you to all our brothers and sisters in the provincial fire services coming out over the last 24 hours from all across the province and joining us here in Penticton against this firefight as the fire encroached on to Penticton. We were very fortunate yesterday with the wind event. Although it was quite vigorous above Penticton and on the hillsides, it was very soft on the fire. We didn't see a lot of expansion, so the efforts that we put in was well worth its while. On the upper east sides of our community, up in Wilty Bench, the upper Carmite area, we did do a lot of work with wet lines, keeping the area around those homes nice and wet, so if there was any ember transplant, we didn't see any ignitions with any ember transplant or ash fly. We didn't see any real damage to any structures at all. So those 61 pieces of fire apparatus certainly did impact our community, and the residents were very appreciative of that, as I know from the comments I've received. Today, this morning, released 55 actually units of those apparatus, and we continue our efforts with the remaining pieces in the two divisions that this fire itself has been geographically laid out. So working alongside the BC Wildfire Service Incident Management Team, we will continue the structure defense base with their efforts to continue our efforts in the areas that are potentially a threat, but working towards making sure there's no hot spots around the properties, any smokes that are in and around the communities, we're actioning those, making sure they're nice and cold before we allow any of the residents back into their properties. So right now, we still have crews out setting up sprinkler systems in the areas that are unprotected with water supplies. We do have crews boots on the ground working, like I said, along with the BC Wildfire Service and air operations, and we'll continue that effort until there's no longer a threat to any structures on this fire. At this time, I'd be happy to take any questions.
The residents of Heritage Hills, they're wondering if the road's going to be opened back up, if they can go in. Is that any indication of when they're hoping for a timeline, I guess?
I don't have any control measures of that decision-making, then I have to defer that to BC Wildfire Service.
You're saying that you've been releasing some units. You said the worst is behind you, or getting safe?
From what we have gathered, and from the intelligence that we've received from BC Wildfire Service and their fire specialists, the fire behavior specialists, and their ops chiefs will be just after me, we feel very confident that the fire is no longer threatening structures adjacent to the fire in the city of Penticton. However, we are still working on behalf of the regional district for structure protection, and we'll continue to do that until there's no longer a threat to those structures.
Hi there. You said 55 pieces of equipment have been sent home. How does that translate to firefighters themselves?
That's a quick math question, but we're talking probably about 100, 110 firefighters that have gone home. The demobilization took a little while this morning, but there's a process that we have to follow, make sure they get home safely, get home to protect their own communities. Like everybody knows that we still are in certainly a wildfire condition in the province, so we didn't want to hang on to those resources too long, so we wanted to get them back to their homes as quickly as we possibly could.
And do you work to send home the firefighters who are coming from farther away? Do they go home first?
Yeah, we try to use the nearest and closest asset that's appropriate for the conditions of the fire. So yeah, we didn't have a lot of resources further than Merritt, and of course we did have lower mainland pieces of apparatus just due to the sheer size and availability of those pieces of equipment. We had resources from the lower mainland, Vancouver Island, and as far as into the Kootenays, and as far as Golden itself.
I saw a number of these fire crews heading home this morning. Was that decision to send them home made this morning, and they spent the night here last night?
Yeah, so they worked all day very hard yesterday, and they need to have straight 8 hours of rest before we would allow them to drive home. They wanted to get home, but we wanted to make sure that they were getting home safely, so they hit the rack here in Penticton, and as soon as they got up this morning, they got through their pieces of apparatus, checked out appropriately, and then they're on their way home.
Do you have a rough estimate as far as Penticton firefighters, the number of them that have been doing structural protection?
Every single one of the Penticton firefighters have been involved in this event.
Thank you.
What was the difference between this effort with this fire and the fire that burned 94 in the same area and ended up destroying homes?
Yeah, so this is, like you mentioned, in 1994, the Garnet Mountain Fire, we had new growth, so it was untouched fire. This is second generation since 1994. So that fire in 94 burned off that hillside in a lot of the areas. So this is second generation. So we had a lot of mixed fuel types, long grassy fuels, flashy fuels. So it moved quickly, but it didn't want to carry too far into the community just based on it already being burnt through. Our concern mostly was that the city of Penticton has got lots of old growth, large pine trees in their communities, and we didn't want those embers transplanting into the community and igniting the homes.
Can you say anything about what the city's saying, that they're thankful for this provincial program that allows you to bring in other resources to help? Is there anything to be said that resources you had this time that the city didn't have in 1994, like did that play a role in the success of this fire?
Yes, absolutely. The coordination efforts by the BC Wildfire Service, the Office of the Fire Commissioner, and the BC Fire Chiefs Association has created an interagency agreement where it's very quickly able to be deployed. It's like a one-call system. So we have a provincial wildfire coordination officer in Kamloops, and that person has a list of available resources throughout the province that can respond immediately at a beckon moment to respond to these communities, to assist. They get the call earlier in the year to be able to be put on the availability list, and once that call is made, they are deployed, and then they return to the property that's the municipality that's requesting them. We didn't have that necessarily in 1994, and the training that our BC Municipal Fire Services are getting now, like we have here in Penticton, the BC Wildfire Service training symposium each year in the spring has created the operational readiness for the municipal fire departments significantly.
Maybe a question for Mr. Van Dyke, if I may. Since things look optimistic or better than they looked yesterday, what's your estimate of how long the preventive evacuation order will be maintained?
Thank you for the question, and probably best deferred to the regional district of Okanagan and Similkameen. The city of Penticton has not issued an evacuation order. We've got just about 3,700 residents and businesses, I should say, that are under evacuation alert. That alert will remain in place over the next few days. We're working very closely, as Chief Watkinson mentioned, with the BC Wildfire Service to understand what the risks are, and when those risks have been mitigated or extinguished, we will lift the evacuation alert. I don't know if there's anything, Eric, you'd like to add just around the evacuation order that's in place in the regional district.
Thank you, Donnie. I was just speaking with our emergency manager, Sean Vaisler, and direction for lifting any orders or even putting them in place comes from BC Wildfire. Ultimately, the regional district makes the final call on whether there is an order in place or whether it's being lifted. So it'll come from BC Wildfire. And at this time, I'm going to bring up Nicole Bonnet. She's going to be available now to make to take a few more questions. And she's bringing with her Dan Todin Chabot. His last name is spelled Taudin -Chabot, probably pronounced slightly differently, but hopefully he can help us with that. He is the operations section chief. So both will be available to answer any of your questions regarding the Christie Mountain wildfire.
So can you answer that question? I mean, some of the residents who are on the order and the alert are all just curious when it may be lifted. We had some people say to us today they were surprised it hadn't been lifted yet.
Do you want me to?
If you would like to, yeah.
Yeah, I can say that we are. Sorry. We are looking at that daily when we can downgrade the evacuation order to an alert. We're looking at it throughout the day. We're running growth projection models with our fire behavior analysts, and we're looking at the work that's been done on the ground. We haven't lifted the order because we haven't felt 100% comfortable yet, and when we do, we will. We don't want to be premature on this. It's really important that we nail it. So I know it's tough on the citizens, and we feel that, and we feel that pressure, but we also don't want to make an incorrect decision. So.
I think anyone down on the lake yesterday afternoon kind of expected the worst with the wind whipping up through there. Can you just provide some details about why that growth never happened on the fire?
Yep, definitely like to speak to that. So yeah, we did receive significantly strong winds. It's actually one of our 18 watchouts for us as firefighters when we have light flashy fuel types and we have incoming cold front. It's one of the things that we really, really need to be concerned about because that's when we often see that significant fire behavior. Yesterday we didn't see it, and that's because of the work that the ground crews are making, and as well as our aviation fleet. The combination of our aviation fleet and the ground crews has really slowed down the fire growth, so that's been really good. The other thing that I think has been in our favor is that it's actually, the fire was running into the old Garnet fire from '94, so that has taken a bit of the steam out or the fuels out for what it was burning in. So.
The winds are not supposed to be all that strong, I don't think, over the next few days. Speaking with Environment Canada, just wondering what you guys are looking at over the next few days in talking about that evacuation order. If you think, is the weather favorable? Should people be sort of starting to feel uplifted? What's your
Well, just about the winds. So yeah, when we have a cold front roll through, the winds have been pushing primarily from the south, pushing north. So that's why the fire was driving towards the north. Once the cold front passes, the wind shift 180 and start going back the other direction. So now we're getting winds pushing on the fire in a direction that we haven't seen yet. So for us, it's really important that we gain and establish control with the winds now pushing the other direction before we make any decisions.
So just looking forward with that, forecast coming up.
Yeah.
What can people kind of expect, and can they make any sort of plan over the next day, 2, 3 days?
What I can say is where the winds are pushing back into now, although they are lighter, it is a heavier fuel load. So that's one of the things that we are concerned about. We'll heavily be utilizing our aviation fleet as well as our air tankers to try to stop any growth, but that's something that we're definitely keeping an eye on. So I don't want to say too much about what can and can't be done because we are looking at a change of fuel type.
We got 5 minutes.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry, those projected winds you're talking about, what direction are those projected for?
So we, with the cold front going through yesterday, we saw winds coming from the south pushing north. Now we're seeing them switch 180 from the north-northwest, pushing south-southeast.
Can you describe a little bit of what that means and what is in that path, in that direction?
Yeah, so what that means is the fire's been pushing one direction. Now that it's flipped around and it's been pushing from the other direction, it's going to test fuels that haven't been tested before. So that's pretty much all I can say about that. It's just we're going to have a different wind direction. It's going to challenge our lines in areas that we weren't initially seeing, but it's also in a direction that is favorable as far as community. So.
Can you pronounce your name? Sorry.
Yeah, it's Dan Todin Chabot.
Can you spell it again?
It's TAUDIN-CHABOT. Todd Chabot.
Okay, I'll step in.
If I could just real quick before Eric takes over, we've been getting a few requests for going out to site and for media footage. So we did take some video yesterday and we will be working to upload it and send out a little bit of information about how to obtain that footage, hopefully by later on this afternoon.
Great, thank you. Thank you both. So we'll just wrap things up. A couple of quick notes. I was again speaking with our Emergency Operations Center Director for the RDOS, and preventative measures are being taken to ensure the safety of anyone returning to that area under an evacuation order. And again, that's 319 homes. And one of the elements of that is to make sure it's safe to re-enter. So that involves a geotech and some other serious considerations to make sure it's safe to re-enter. And that work is being done right now. We have this opportunity to remind people to have a household preparedness plan in place, and that includes a grab-and-go kit in your vehicle. It also includes preparing papers, important papers, medications, cell phone chargers, important contacts, that type of thing. Also, for anyone living in the regional district, you can sign up for Civic Ready. That's our mass notification system. Penticton has a similar system. You can find out more on their website at penticton.ca. That way, if there is an emergency event, you'll be notified by text, by landline, or by email. Very quickly, I'd like to thank a few people. We should thank the media for being here. We really appreciate you helping get the message out. BC Wildfire Service, the Office of the Fire Commissioner, BC Fire Chiefs Association, all of the local and visiting fire departments and firefighters for doing what they've been doing, all the emergency personnel, and that includes RCMP and Search and Rescue, ESS, Emergency Support Services. Those volunteers are phenomenal. The work that they do to make sure people are comfortable, and they not only talk to them, but they make sure they get what they need, and that's really important. The City of Penticton, the RDOS, all the staff and management, neighboring municipalities, and all those who've reached out to try and help in any way they can, and we appreciate that, and everyone else helping in the community, plus Interior Health. So with that, we'll wrap things up. We do thank you very much for attending today, and we will provide any new updates on the websites, as I mentioned earlier, and through social media. Thank you.